Okay, welcome to the Public Utilities Commission, a meeting that was rescheduled from December 3rd at 3 o'clock to today's date, December 9th at 3 p.m. Present members Shane, Mike, Charles and Scott, and myself, Craig. That is the roll call. Looking through the agenda and the previous minutes, are there any questions on those items from Charles?
Nope.
I don't have any questions, so we have a motion to approve the agenda and minutes. I'll make a motion to approve them.
I vote to approve.
Second, okay. All right, so the first item on discussion today is a grant that we obtained called the ETIPP grant. Basically, what it is Energy Technology Innovation Partnership Grant. And what it does is it helps us to audit our distribution system of electricity that we have. A little background on that. I guess I'll just read what the background is so people can understand it better. The city power is currently served by a substation with 4 current circuit outlets, 2 of which we are using. And what this grant will enable us to do is to study what it takes to distribute a power, how it's being distributed over those 2 circuits, and maybe we can utilize a 3rd circuit. This is something that our employees at the electrical department, it'll help them out on how to maintain equipment and power outages and things like that, or to head off any issues of overloading certain circuits, especially if we bring on more sizable loads of electricity through, could be apartment buildings that are all electrical heated, or a new building that the solid waste company is building, and how much of that's going to be electrified as far as plugging in vehicles if they go to do things like that. That's just an example of that. This grant is managed by the Energy Technology Innovation Partnership, and I guess the only question I have on that is it's a national renewable energy laboratory, and what they do is they provide technical assistance to help towns like what we have, coastal, remote, island communities. We'll be working with Slipstream Incorporated, which is somebody I do not know who they are. I'll have Shane.
Yeah, so amazing what can be already outdated in just a couple of weeks here. So wrote this on the 26th, and in that time, the National Renewable Energy Lab is now the National Lab of the Rockies. They've renamed, and they've kind of expanded their scope from renewable energy to just energy. So they're still a national lab. They're based in Golden, Colorado. And yeah, they have this program called ETIP. And it, like you said, it helps the rural coastal, remote communities around the nation and territories with energy resilience. And I put up here the communities that they selected for this. So the whole country, right? And it's coastal, but like Grand Marais was selected alongside these different communities from Puerto Rico, a lot in Alaska, Hawaii. But yeah, in the Great Lakes region, there are 5 communities that were selected, and we're one of them. We met today. We had a kickoff meeting today with our folks from Slipstream and the National National Laboratory of the Rockies. And so just to get a little more clear about what this is, so it's, yeah, the Department of Energy, and there's the 4 national labs. And then because the national labs they're mostly based, mountains or west, they have regional partners that they have selected to work in the different regions of the country. And ours is, of course, the Midwest. And so Slipstream is just an engineering firm in Madison, and they're working with all the Midwest Great Lakes cities. And so, yeah, we want to learn more about our distribution system, and if a third circuit's necessary. And this program, we'll be working with some researchers that this is what they do. They study electrical distribution, and we met with them today and answered a bunch of questions, kind of gave them an overview of who Grand Marais is. And I'd like to say, like, oh yeah, we're probably the smallest community they've ever worked with, but if I go back a slide, one of the communities they worked with, it's not on this slide. Well, one of the communities they worked with in a previous cohort was an island, in Lake Michigan, and I was like 600 people, so that's the whole point of this, is to get to those rural communities that need help with, their electric infrastructure. So we are on the deep dive track of this project, which is this track. They're going to work with us for up to 2 years, and right now we just did the first meeting, so we're in that onboarding, like the first month or two. We're going to kind of get the official documents in place so that we can proceed to developing the scope of work and what questions they're going to answer, and specifically what they're going to deliver for the project. And that's going to take a couple months. And so probably through the spring, we'll just kind of be figuring out the parameters of the project. And then for, another year after that. So now we're, let's just say June, they start actually sinking into the meat of the project. It'll be a full year more before we really have the first deliverables and results. So it's a pretty in-depth study of our entire system and kind of how it needs to adapt to whether a third circuit or just, more electrical load.
So do they actually come up, at some point in time, do they actually have to come here?
They referenced the site visit, so they may show up. And we've got people from the Berkeley lab that were in the meeting today, and there's people from the National Lab of the Rockies, and there was Slipstream folks. So they would be coming from kind of all over, and didn't say officially like we will come up and visit, but they did reference that it's a possibility.
They probably don't have to come visit.
They get information from our as far as how our loads are being distributed. We feed that information to them.
I suspect that's what it'll be, is that we'll just use customer data and system maps and things that we have to give them information to work with. Because we haven't really deeply developed the scope of work yet, we're not exactly sure what all those things are going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is just kind of a introduction to this project, and we're still getting introduced to it as well. It was an opportunity that came up, and so I applied for it with Mike's help, and kind of like, okay, let's put together something. And then here we're awarded the chance to have this work done for us, and I think it's pretty exciting to be one of those few cities in the whole country that gets to take advantage of this.
Yeah,
So,
congrats, good work.
yeah.
And so I saw in the memo that it's a $50,000 grant. So what?
Right.
So where does that get us, or how much does that get us?
We actually don't know how big the grant is. We're not going to get paid.
Oh, I thought it
The
said.
50 is what we can get to be reimbursed for our own expenses.
Oh,
So
So
yeah,
that's not paying the slipstream or any of the federal employees. They have their own budget that we're really not aware of, so I suspect it's quite a bit bigger than that.
So our own expenses would be what, your and Shane's and electrical staff time?
Yeah.
That you just bill them for work on this particular project? Is that
Yeah.
how that goes?
yeah. So the way it works with the Department of Energy is, we would be a subcontractor to the Department of Energy, and that's how they have to officially
Yeah,
structure it. Just we would be a subcontractor for them, and any hours that we put into this project, we can
Bill.
put them on an expense report, and they will reimburse us up to $50,000. So I think at the time I wrote this, I thought we were awarded 50,000 for the study, but it's definitely bigger than 50 for the study. This is just our
Yeah.
time for the
Nice.
year.
and so who do you imagine from Grand Marais will be working on this project?
I'll be the point person,
Yeah,
and Mike will be definitely in on a lot of it. And then,
Kim, Alyssa, the line workers, probably everybody,
oh, okay. Okay,
as we figure out what data they need and where we're gonna get it.
yeah,
But the actual analysis side of things is really not, we're not gonna be
No.
deeply involved in that, just guiding it, making sure it's answering questions we're interested in,
yeah,
feeding them information.
yeah.
and then Joe Hoffman from Simple was in on the meeting
Yeah, I was
today,
gonna
too.
say, does Simca have some involvement?
They do, and there may be other local partners we bring in to deal with specific questions, probably Arrowhead and GRE at some point.
And what do we know about Slipstream? They're the principal partner in this, like, do you think, or they're
Yeah.
just, that's just one name among many?
They're
handle this
our regional partner, but they are. So the research is being done in the national lab, Berkeley and I keep saying NREL in my head, but it's National Laboratory of the Rockies. They're the ones doing the actual research, and then Slipstream is kind of the local affiliate, being the conduit between us and the researchers and helping us organize the project, the work that's being done.
So it's Slipstream probably that will produce the report.
Not sure. In our kickoff meeting, most of the pointed questions were coming from the national lab employees. So they might be doing the heavy lifting on the analysis.
But Slipstream may be the coordinator for the researchers, kind of keeping the researchers organized and setting up the meetings and stuff. But then we also have like a national lab handler who's working with just the Great Lakes projects.
Just kind of project manager for a few of them.
Yeah.
They used the term electrification scenarios today. So that's how I'm currently kind of picturing the project is they're going to develop a few what if this is how the system is built out in different, whether it's load or whether it's renewables or whether it's a lot more electric heat or electrification of other things. So that is exactly what we've been talking about and thinking about, and this is really quite an opportunity to get some help.
Yeah, seems great.
Yeah, so we'll keep you up to date, and as the project progresses, I'll put it in weekly updates, and we'll be back here. I don't know when, but to talk about this again, maybe when we have a full scope of work flushed out.
When's your next meeting?
2 weeks on the 18th of December, and then we'll meet a couple times in January, February, and we'll go monthly from there.
Great, well, again, congrats, I think it's really good opportunity and should be really helpful in trying to figure out, what we need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, the original project, like where it came from, was a different grant, a smaller grant that, we just had this opportunity come across and let's see if this fits. And that original grant, they liked it. They said it's way beyond our scope. We can't possibly take it on because of that. And they kept it in their kind of pool of ideas, and then I think had passed it off to Great Plains Institute and said, "Do you know anybody who could work on this?" And so that's how we got connected to the ETIP program.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the money actually comes from the U.S. Department of Energy. Okay. Okay. Anything else, Charles? Thank you, Shane.
Thanks.
Moving ahead, the next item would be the 2026 draft budgets concerning, I guess the first thing we can talk about would be the water fund or water sewer. Or do you want to go back and finish up the electrical or do that, whatever?
Let's circle back to that at the end.
Okay,
So we've got our water fund
yep,
budget up first in the packet. And
okay.
it's probably worth talking about a few higher level trends before we dip into what we're actually recommending for a rate increase here. You can see the line item level we're looking at this budget's pretty high in this report, right? But it helps understand where we spend our money. And personnel is pretty predictable number. We have the same folks we had the year before. The increase is programmed in. It's not the driver of our expenses. Supplies, you can see, has kind of gone up and down. It was a pretty big year in 2024, and it's a fairly decent sized number in 2026. And supplies pays for, we're talking about things we use both in the field and in the treatment plant to treat and distribute the water. So chemicals for the treatment, pipe, hydrants, all those things. And because when Scott came on, we really ramped up, I think, the amount of maintenance that we were doing. That number's gone up a little bit. Services pays for both internal services like our own utility bills, but also external services, hiring contractors. And we've done quite a bit more of that recently too. So Scott had provided a list of all the projects that he's done in the past year. And I think if you remember when we toured the water plant this year, we talked about a lot of those projects. We've only dipped our toe in the water there. It's a lot of great work's been done by Scott, his team, and the folks he's brought in, but we know there's more to come. And so maybe this is a good time, Scott, for you to just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing next when it comes to the water department.
I'll bring it to you.
Okay, so in 2026, we're gonna have the Department of Health is requiring us to inspect the Moose Tower, the twin reservoirs up by the hospital, and inspect the clear well at the water plant, and also the intake pipes, going out from the water plant into Lake Superior, where we actually get our raw water. And that's going to be somewhere in that $25,000 to $30,000 range to inspect all of that. We've got a number of different companies that will bring in essentially an underwater drone that will actually run around the tank, and it will look at any of the structure members inside of the tank, the outside walls, etc. And they can tell us the condition of the concrete is appropriate, the paint coating, like the Moose Tower, that's painted steel. And so, somewhere in that 20 to 25 year mark is when water plants, water towers often need a rehab. And so we're gonna see how the Moose Tower is doing.
That's on the inside of the,
It's inside and outside.
Inside and outside.
Inside
Yeah.
and outside, yeah.
It's not been 20 years yet, but we're getting closer.
we're getting
The
close.
last time we did this, we had a diver do it, just to give you an idea of technology-wise where we were at.
So, but it has a coating on the inside that's.
Yes.
Needs to be inspected.
Yeah, it's an epoxy coating.
Yep.
Two-part epoxy coating, it's a very strong industrial coating. The things that really influence the coating are how much ice buildup we have. And so we're trying to operate the towers as, the tanks essentially, as efficiently as we can, so that way we keep the waters warm as we can. And then, so that usually typically means that we run the tanks a little bit lower, so that way we can have a greater percentage turnover. So that way we can, granted, the water's coming out of Lake Superior at, we're lucky if it's, in the mid-30s.
Right.
And, if we had a stretch of 2 weeks, 3 weeks where we're a -15, -20, that's a good possibility for ice to form. And there's some equipment that could be added to the tanks from mixing to make sure we do, as good a job as we can do. Those are things that will eventually come up. They would really make operations better, and then that way would allow us to keep the towers at a higher level for better system pressure plus fire protection volume. Alrighty. We've got at least a dozen hydrants, if not 2 dozen hydrants that are gonna need repairs. So that's a big thing that we're gonna be doing out in the distribution system. We've got a bunch of curb stops that have been hit over the years by, private snowplow drivers that have been buried. We're gonna try to bring those up to the surface. Things that have just been damaged over time. And there's probably 2 or 3 dozen of those that are on that list. I know we've got one valve that when you open it up, water comes to the surface in significant quantities, and that valve was put in the 80s, and they used steel bolts to hold the bonnet on top of it. So when, it's a big gate valve, so when you slide that gate down, it pushes that bonnet up, and that causes a break in the seal, and so it'll open up and will leak a lot of water. And so as long as we don't have to close the valve, we're okay. But that's one of the things that we're gonna be digging up. It's just a couple blocks up the hill from the dentist's office.
There's a fire hydrant valve?
I'm sorry?
That's a fire hydrant valve?
No, it's actually a mainline valve.
Mainline valve, okay.
Although we do have we're suspecting a couple of fire hydrant valves as well. And then we just had a sanitary survey by the Department of Health. And that's, the letter was out too late for us to include it in the packet. But I'm gonna be working with engineers and potentially vendors to try to come up with some solutions to meet what the Department of Health wants us to do.
What's on their list?
They have, they want us to do a couple of real minor things, which staff and I can take care of. But some of the other things they want us to do is, for instance, they want alarms if the turbidity of the water gets to a certain point. So if the water is coming in, normally lake water is pretty clear, but every now and then we get the wind in the right direction, and that stirs up a bunch of silt. And so that water comes real cloudy. Well, we want to make sure we're treating the raw water well enough so that way we don't have solids overwhelming our sand filters, so that way the solids continue going on into the finished water. And then if the finished water turbidity gets to be above 0.3, and that's still, you can kind of see a little bit of cloudiness. But once we start getting over that 0.3 range, we have a legitimate possibility of not disinfecting it well enough. And so if we get to they want us to have alarms so that if the turbidity gets to a certain point, then we'll get an alarm. It'll call us and tell us, hey, something's wrong. Well, the big problem is that our PLCs are no longer programmable. And that system was put in 4 years ago, Quality Flow out of New Prague, whom I've worked with in previous lives, has been very good to work with. However, in this point in time, they're saying that there's nothing they can do, and they want to charge us somewhere in that $70,000 to $100,000 range to update the control system. And so that's something that I'm pursuing. I'm asking the Department of Health if they've got any clout to cause Quality Flow, or one of the engineering outfits, if they've got any clout to say, hey, Quality Flow, you're not really giving them good customer service by forcing them to replace relatively new equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
And so we'll see if anything happens out of that, out of those conversations. But then some of the other things that they want us to do is evaluate the whole water filters, evaluate all the pump conditions, evaluate the rest of the sensors. They want to evaluate if we're actually meeting the newer styles of disinfection that are out there. So what that means is, okay, I'm going to try to explain this simply. There's a bunch of engineering stuff that they do to make sure that you've got enough contact time to eliminate viruses. Viruses that cause dysentery. Nobody wants that. And so there's engineering calculations that can be done that I don't know what they are, but I know they're fairly involved calculations regarding temperature, pH, water clarity, and there's a number of other factors that if you don't meet these certain requirements, you have to do something to increase the contact time of the disinfectant. And worst case scenario, and I'm not saying that that's what we need to do, but worst case scenario is increasing the size of the clear well, which means construction. But we're going to do what we can to avoid that, and then the engineers may end up having to help us. We may be able to use other vendors. Minnesota Rural Water, for instance, might be able to help us out on that, on some of those calculations. But well, like I said, a lot of this is just so new that we really haven't had the opportunity to digest it and really understand what all is going to be involved in this assessment analysis of the water plant.
So is that contact time prior to the water getting pushed to the holding tanks?
Yes.
It's contact time within
In
that
the,
plant
in the plant itself, yes.
where the sand filters are?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I think it's important to remember the Department of Health is literally looking at the worst case scenarios here.
Yeah,
We want to do that when it comes to water treatment. This isn't an issue that's a current problem. We're passing all of our tests, our treatment works fine, we haven't had any issues. But we don't ever want to get it wrong with water treatment, so it's okay for us to be extra sensitive to the what-ifs in this case. We had already been working on most of the things that Scott brought up that the Department of Health is talking about. Replaced a lot of pumps recently, looking at our filters, rehabbed even some of our filters, have plans to do more work, to do some work in the filters, just to make sure they stay functioning at the level that they need to. And then the stuff we didn't get to really this last year is more about the controls and the sensors and things that Scott's already had on his plans and has wanted to do. And it's just been a matter of budget really to get us to that place. And so those had to wait, and they're kind of the next thing we're going to start looking at. And he's given you a little preview of some of the costs we might be thinking about. That's part of what's driving this budget here. And this budget, we're not talking about raising enough money in 2026 from ratepayers to pay for all this work. just like we didn't do that in 2025. When it comes to these types of long-term repairs, long-term improvements, these are things that we pay for over time, that will depreciate, that we gather cash and put in a cash balance, and then spend that to make the improvements. So if you look at the depreciation line, that's $191,000 of a $533,000 budget, just paying for depreciation, which means we're not writing checks to anybody. That's just money we're collecting to use for capital replacements. Some of that money we use to pay on debt for things we've already replaced. Some of that money accumulates in our fund balance and we use it as we need to pay for the things that Scott's talking about. It's a big number, and it's bigger than it's been. You can see that we thought for 2025 it would be 175, because that's what it was in 2023. And if you'll recall, we got kind of a 2-year delay on these numbers because we only have 2024 actuals. Even though we're almost to the end of 2025, we don't have all of our numbers in. And particularly the capital side and the depreciation side, a lot of that happens after the year is done when we do our audit. So we don't have it, but it's gone up a little bit. And why is that? Because we've made significant improvements to the system. Fifth Avenue, for instance, we reconstructed Fifth Avenue to the tune of $1 million of water pipe replacement that we're paying for with debt payments, but that immediately gets added to the value of our assets and depreciated as well. So when we make $1 million improvement, this number goes up, and we need to collect that money to continue to pay for improvements. That's one of the reasons why this budget's gone up a little bit faster than we had hoped. Debt service is the same thing. You can see it was down to 20,000 in 2023, meaning we were really getting close to being done paying debt. There was most of our debt payments were the capital side. There wasn't a lot of interest, but now there's pretty fresh payments with some of those new improvements, and so that number's gone up again. That's an actual number we're writing a check right there. This is the interest on our debt. And the capital reserve item, this last one I'll mention, in 2026, I'm suggesting, even at a 10% rate increase, that we're gonna spend down our reserves $23,000 rather than increase them like we had hoped. I'll circle back to that when we look at page 2, because there's other places where we're talking about maybe not spending that down. But that, when we use the $23,000 reduction in our reserves, that means we have an expense budget of $533,000. We need to look at the revenue side to understand why rates might need to go up. You can see in 2024, we collected $407,000 in utility bills. Monthly water utility bills to all of our customers, $407,000. That was only $5,000 more than we collected in 2023. And that was with a 3% rate increase. So a 3% rate increase, and we didn't increase 3%. We increased a little over 1% in the total collections. For 2025, we had a budget of $430,000. That's basically the $407,000 that we collected in 2024 plus a 3% rate increase, except we thought that 2024 number was going to be more like 415 or 420. Just wasn't, because our sales are not as high as they used to be. Sales for water have been historically decreasing for 30 plus years, almost 40 years of the records that we've got. It's a pretty clear trend.
Why?
Because efficiency. Because it used to be 6 gallons of flush and now it's 1.8.
Toilets.
Because faucets and showers and washing machines and everything,
Dishwashers.
things that use water are much more efficient these days. So although the rate's going up fast, most customers over the past 20 years have found ways to use quite a bit less water, which is why our sales are down. But it's hard to run a business that way with decreasing sales, even with decreasing users getting decreasing sales. That's another reason why the rate increase is necessary. So if you look at the 2026 budget, we're saying Well, 2025 budget, we thought we'd get 430 plus a 3% rate increase, which really would have been $443,000 in total collections. And now we're saying, well, it's coming in low, so it's probably only going to get to about 430. That's our baseline. We have some other sources of income, but not a lot. Part of one of the debt payments for one of the capital projects that was a replacement of water mains, I believe in the downtown, there is a levy that the city made to make that payment. So we show it on the books of the water fund, but it really isn't being paid for by the water fund. So there's that special assessment and debt levy revenue line item is outside money coming in. Fees are, look at the difference between 23 and 26. That's the difference in whether we collect the facility fees from our permittees or not. So it's not a huge number, but it's a noticeable number. So not collecting facility fees from new customers means 5,000 to 10,000 a year potentially that we have to collect in rates instead.
We changed that.
We did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's some miscellaneous money, which is mostly interest on what we have in the bank, which has been pretty healthy these past few years. But it's not, the rates aren't as high as they've been. We don't have as much money because we've been spending quite a bit of it. If you look in 2022 and 2023, those miscellaneous numbers were really high. We had other money coming in, whether it was grant money, other things. We will have that in the 2025 actuals as well. We're going to give ourselves a credit for some of the grant money that we got from IRRB for one of our projects. We're also going to give ourselves a credit for some money that MnDOT returned to us after the end of the Highway 61 project. So that just went into our reserves and we spent it on projects. If we manage to get $430,000 in utility billing in 2025, which we feel pretty good about now, a 10% rate increase is $43,000. And add those line items up, and we're at 533, which is exactly where the expense side is with a $23,000 deduct.
No, there's no way to calculate. Well, I guess you have to play out the year because of these new apartments being built.
So we've seen the new apartments in play.
That one, yeah, not the other one yet.
I mean, and that's the bigger one up the
Yeah.
hill.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for us to see water sales there
Yeah.
because I think it's been really gradual growth in usage up there. Plus, I'm sure they're very efficient with their water fixtures. And the water meters, they only have one for the building. They don't have individual water meters. With the water, with the electric side, we've seen an increase with just the meter fixed fees because each of those units has its individual meter.
They have their own electric meter.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I think we're gonna have to start looking a little more seriously at on the water and wastewater side is our rate structure too. Rather than just charging the same type of fixed fee based on the meter size. Maybe that's not adequate if we're gonna have customers like that are significant users and they're really 50 units, not one, even if it's a 3-inch meter that we charge a big
Yeah, so
fixed
you're
fee
not
for.
you're not getting the fee
It's maybe not really covering our expenses
like you
for
do off of an
administering
individual
that.
house.
Yeah.
What's that fee for water right now? 20
Yeah,
some dollars a
20 some
month
dollars a
per
month.
per meter,
maybe 30 something with water and wastewater both in there,
Yeah.
35 to 40.
right?
So that.
Wait, so we're not charging individual, like, fixed monthly fees to those? I
Right.
see, cause
Individual apartments.
Because there's only one meter and there's one customer, so they're not paying for water and wastewater in those apartments. They have an electric bill that they pay us, but the apartment building itself pays the water bill.
Right.
Yeah.
So they pay 1 meter fee, which is based on the size of
Yeah.
that.
So it's quite a bit more than a typical residential meter fee. It's significantly higher, and yet still, it's not 50 times higher.
No, it's not $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
So here we are in the conversation about facility fees. We knew we were making a sacrifice in rates, And it was to serve a different goal, which was to try and make it more affordable to build housing. This is the same conversation. If we want to increase the rates, what we're doing is making it more expensive to have housing. And yet, when it comes to utilities, we're trying to treat all of our customers fairly. And our customers are the ones that are in the houses already. So it makes that conversation back and forth really difficult. It's
Yeah.
tough questions.
Well, you wanna be fair, but you also want to, do what we did, I understand that, but how do other cities run apartment buildings that hook up to water? Do they force them to have a separate meter for each apartment?
No,
or-
no, they do it like we do. That's very common.
Okay.
The rate structures are different. They might have different fixed fees. They might have more options for fixed fees. I think looking into that question is on our list for this next year. Are there different ways to handle this where we can make sure it's fair? And it could very well be that the way we're doing it right now is the right way to do it. But what we're not seeing is significant growth because of this new customer. It's pretty marginal growth. So I was hoping that we'd see, instead of less sales, at least flat with new customers, and I'm not sure that's happened yet. So
Yeah,
growth industry here doesn't mean we can pay for more stuff, like, because the sales are always going down. It's tough.
An apartment dwellers, they're not watering their lawns, they're not, it's probably, maybe laundry expenses are lower than
Yeah.
two people living in a house,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You wouldn't want to charge them the same as you'd charge a single-family home. That wouldn't be fair either.
Right, I'm just saying, it's understandable that the water use per residence there is gonna be smaller, likely to be smaller
Yeah.
than that of somebody who has their own house.
And here's the great news about it. That's 50 new customers buying water, even if it's not as much as we'd hoped. But we didn't have to build any new pipes. We don't have to maintain any more pipes to make that happen.
Yeah,
That's infill development,
On the
and
expense side
that's
of it.
good stuff.
yeah.
But I still think it's gonna be growth for usage. It has to be. It's not gonna be
There'll be some increase
I would hope
over
so.
what it would have been otherwise.
So this $533,000 on both sides of the ledger, on the expense side, includes this big old depreciation number, which is not a check we're writing to anybody, and this debt service number, which is a check we're writing, but we do the math for us. That's $250,000. That's almost half of the budget. That makes sense. It should cost us about half to take care of our capital stuff and about half to do our operating. That makes sense. How are we spending that money right now? Well, we have $228,000 of bills to pay, debt payments to make with that $250,000. You can see the remaining is about $23,000. And so we're not actually spending down our reserves. What we're doing is not collecting that additional money and putting it in our reserves. So although we're showing it as a negative on the front end, we're planning on our reserves basically staying even with this operating budget. But with the list of projects that Scott has lined up for us, we're gonna be spending our reserves to do a lot of that work. And depending upon the answers we get to some of these questions, if there's a large capital project that needs to be done at the water plant, we may have to talk about borrowing again. So that's the big picture at the water department. There's a lot going on. Great progress was made this year on work in the water plant itself. And there's a lot of good plans in place for that to continue, so I'm feeling good about it, but it comes at a price.
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah. And that 10% number is just, it seems like that may be shocking to people, paying their water bills. It's like, wait, where did this come from? Yes, it's understandable when you go through all the numbers and try to figure out, we need to pay for all these things. the same time, especially in a year where it seems like people are hyper conscious of affordability, it's gonna be, I think, a little hard to swallow.
Yeah. Well, we've got options. We don't have to make all the repairs. I mean, we did that this year too. Like, that's not a trap, right? We decide how quickly we're going to fix these things.
Yeah.
How we're gonna spend the money.
And if we don't think that that's a number that you're willing to put out there, then tell us what it is and we'll work with that.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, you can't defer maintenance forever. It's not a great idea. You want to have a system that's reliable and functioning properly, and so I'm not a fan of like putting off maintenance. Eventually, you pay for it, and a lot of times you pay for it. It becomes more expensive than had you taken care of the problem earlier. So
Yeah.
it's not great.
And our strategy's been to try and stay consistent on our rate increases and make sure that our plan includes all the work that needs to be done. And that's worked for us for a very long time. I just think we're finding a few things we didn't anticipate. We had a couple of projects show up that weren't on our plans, but we needed to take advantage of. And that's just caught us behind a little bit.
Yeah, so suppose you say, well, okay, we do this 10% rate increase this year. I mean, it's hard to predict, but would that also imply that maybe next year the rate increase is zero or minimal? Or that is to say, if we sort of take this big gulp right now,
Yeah.
do we avoid that kind of a thing for next year, or how?
That's the sort of thing we've been trying to avoid with regular smaller rate increases is 10, 0, 10, 0, -3,
Right.
And yet that's on the table. Like, what if the water sales increase and between water sales and our rate increase, we find that we've collected more than we need and we've built up our reserves again? Then the math looks very different. And absolutely, we could talk about, we wouldn't suggest a big rate increase. This is more of a quick correction, a one-time correction to get us back to maybe a new level, slightly more sustainable with a higher amount of maintenance happening.
Yeah, and you would really expect that sales suddenly are going to blossom, but you might say, well, we take care of all these deferred maintenance items in 2026, or a lot of them. Maybe there's much less to be done the following year, and so
Yeah.
you have less need for the infusion resulting from the cash or from the rate increase.
So one thing we have heard, the county's starting to talk about Broadway. Downtown, no problem. All of our pipes are in great condition. We don't have to worry about that. Above Highway 61, if they reconstruct Broadway, we're gonna have to reconstruct our water pipes there. They're the sort of pipes we've had to fix breaks on already, so we wouldn't let them reconstruct the road and not do the pipes at the same time.
Yep.
Hopefully that won't be happening in next 2 or 3 years, because we don't want to have to swallow that bill. Also, First Street though, that's the project we do have on our plan, and we will have to make a debt payment. So back to this list of current debt commitments, the 2007 MMUA loan is a 20-year loan, which means we're almost done paying it. 2008 improvements, same way, 20-year loan, almost done paying it. Only a couple years left on those. And so that was always the plan and still is the plan, that we're gonna take those off the books before we add another payment for another big project. So we're not looking at a giant rate increase to pay for our planned street reconstruction projects.
Yeah.
But that Fifth Avenue is a big number.
Right. Right. And it affects both the depreciation and the debt service, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about sewer. It's mostly the same story, but there's a couple of things on the sewer budget that are worth pointing out. If you look again, personnel, we're right there. That's easy, predictable, not increasing a lot. Supplies, same thing. This is paying for chemicals, it's paying for pipe, it's paying for stuff like that. Scott's actually made some improvements there where I think we might be conservative on this number. We might actually be able to find some savings here next year, but it's hard to count on. It's this next line item that's the big one, right? Services. It was at 250 in 2022, and then it went down a little bit and stayed down, and we thought maybe it was gonna stay down again. That budget of $257,000 for this year included just over 100 for sludge hauling and processing fees at WLSSD. And we're in at about 175 right now on that in 2025, so it's quite a bit higher than we had budgeted. And mostly that's due to operational changes. We're just handling it differently, and I think because we have to, because that's the way it should be done. And so we tried a few things and found that they weren't sustainable, and now we're back to this, and we have to build that back into the budget. So you can see that's a big chunk of the increases there. That's going from where we were at, which was closer to 100 or 120, up to 180 in the sludge hauling number. That offset somewhat by some revenues, but there it is. That's the biggest change in this one. Depreciation is up a little bit, debt service is up a little bit for the same reasons as water, but just at a lower amount because it costs less to reconstruct sewer pipes than it does to reconstruct water pipes. They're easier to build, they don't go as deep, they don't have to be pressure tight, so. But we're doing the same thing. We're looking at this capital reserve use rather than putting money in to get us down to a budget of 854. That's only 16,000 more than we actually spent in 2024. So keep that in mind. Our budget for 2025 was I think a little too optimistic, and we ended up doing more maintenance work than we had planned in the budget, and I think we want to keep doing that. So here we're at. When we looked at the wastewater plant itself, we do have a nice engineering study on it. We are working diligently to get funded a major reconstruction project to the tune of $10 million. And even then, if we're going to be stepping up with our own share of that, that's a double-digit or multiple double-digit rate increase. And so this is not something that was unanticipated in the next 5 years, but I think we want to maybe do it, part of it now. And the reason is the revenue side. Because all that stuff we said about water is the same thing on sewer. We don't have sewer meters. We only charge sewer based on water usage.
Yeah.
So when the water sales are down, sewer revenue's down too. We had $633,000 collected in utility bills in '24. We thought we were gonna get close to $660 in this year, and it's not gonna be that at all. It's gonna be significantly less, maybe even less than we collected in '24. So there we are. That we've got a higher number in the gray water leach sludge hauling revenue side of things here. It's possible that this 10% increase is a little more conservative. And so I'd feel a lot more comfortable if this number needed to get shaved, that we could find some ways to deal with it than the water side of things. But we know we're gonna need to do this anyway because of the wastewater plant reconstruction.
We know we're gonna need to do what?
Probably 25% rate increase over in the next couple of years.
Cumulative.
To make enough room to pay for, say, $2 or $3 million of our own share of a $10 million project.
Yeah.
The depreciation and debt service generates about $205,000. We're planning on that. 178 of that is being spent on actual debt payments, and the remaining 27 is in the budget as a reduction in our expenses. And so we're taking a credit in our expenses for all of the depreciation and debt service money that we know we're not writing a check for, just like we did in the water fund. And that gets us to 854 in expenses. And you can see, if we only collect 620 next year based on this year's sales, or even a little bit lower, then a 10% rate increase only gets us to 854. So how could this turn out better? If the water sales are up and we end up more like 640, and then a 10% rate increase gets us closer to 870 or something, then that's extra money in the bank, and it's the same conversation. Like, we can think about, we don't need to do a big increase next year. Gray water leach sludge revenue could go up, but I'm actually a little nervous about this line item. It's a big part of our revenue, and our partnership with G&G is great. They have a plant in town, so that feels like a very solid long-term relationship, that they're going to continue to haul to their plant, and that we're going to continue to have that as a revenue source. But gray water and leach is a different story. This is coming from facilities that don't exist anymore, or that have other options, and I just don't know how to feel in terms of counting on that as a long-term structural part of our revenue stream. So I think,
Where is that, how does that revenue, so G&G, they collect out of, people's.
holding tanks,
Yeah.
septic tanks,
And they bring it to us.
Yeah.
And they pay us
They
to
pay
take
us.
it. So, but what's the part that you say,
the leachate is
Leachate, that's
from
out of-
ponds that are from Taconite Harbor,
industrial, yeah?
and it's mostly just water, right?
Right.
So it's actually great for us to treat, because it's not, there's really nothing in it to treat. So it's a good business for us to be in, but they're not in the business anymore, right? Taconite Harbor isn't there. They still have ponds, and they're gonna have to deal with those ponds for a long time, I think. But I guess I'm just not sure, with the ownership of that changing and all the changes that are going on, and looking at that, the land use planning for that part of the county, seems like I'm not worried about it in 2026 or 2027 or 2028, but to think about for the next 5 or 10 years, is that gonna be a solid number? It's hard to imagine that it won't change in some way. So that's where I think a conservative approach might still be in our best interest in the wastewater side of things too. So what can we do to help? We started with maybe we should do a 2% increase in electric, when we talked about the electric budget a few months ago. I think we don't want to do that anymore. I think instead we should not do an increase in the electric. And that, we know we're getting a 10% reduction in wholesale rates from SEMPA. We're not looking at a downward trend of electric sales. It's not a real upward trend either, but even at a flat or slightly upward trend, we don't have those same pressures on the revenue side that we do. So I think we can definitely make that work in the electric department, even if it's a temporary thing and we need to come back and add a little more than we wanted to in the future. Maybe this is the time, that's the one that's gonna have to just carry it a little bit.
Have you done any analysis of the typical, I don't know if there is such a thing, but a typical residential utility bill? And so water sales are down, meaning, I guess, that people aren't using that much water, so maybe a 10% increase in water is results in a lower increase in our person's actual costs than a 2% increase in electricity. Do you have any sense of that?
No, it's an unanswerable question, because you can't create a
everybody's.
typical, right? So everybody's individual experience is what it is, and they're gonna pay 10% more than they did last year. because
For
they're not
water.
likely to change their behavior individually. It's really more of a gradual over time as fixtures change, as new construction is added that's more efficient. So I don't think that's an easy analysis to do in a way that people are gonna be very accepting of.
Yeah,
And it's like property taxes the same way, like we're gonna increase our levy 3%, but the property values went up more than that, and so really, if, you know, our property tax rate is gonna go down based on a value, but what do people pay? If your property value went up, then you're gonna pay
right.
a little bit more, and so it's really hard to
Everybody's
come up with a decent analysis that fits enough people's individual scenarios.
Yeah,
And we usually look at water sales, it depends on the audience, right? When we're doing the analysis on whether we wanna say the typical user uses 1,800 gallons or 3,000 or 5,000 gallons a month. It's like, what's a typical user? It's really hard to say. Here's maybe the best we can do.
Well, we know sewer is double your water.
It's not quite double, but it's a little,
Isn't that
it's
how we
more.
calculate it, roughly?
The rates are a little bit, they're not quite double, but they're, 50%
Close.
higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we collect in actual in 2024? 407,000. What are we hoping to collect in actual in 2025? 430, maybe. So that was about 2-3%. If we're
Water, yeah.
and so that's what the actual increase was. That's what we wanted to collect, and it's pretty close to that. I think the best way to talk about it is that if we're doing a 10% rate increase, people should expect their bill to be 10% higher.
really? Because the water part of it is, well, it wouldn't be 10% higher because you still have the base fee and that's not changing.
No, it is changing. We'll change the entire rate. We'll change everything 10%. So not just the usage, everything.
Oh,
That's one of the things I'm suggesting is we'll need to go back and start to look at that split between what's the fixed and what's the volume-based fee, and I think we want to do that next year. Just look at some alternate scenarios, but that's not gonna change the typical user's experience. If you look at the whole bill overall with electric, water, and sewer, I think the electric is often about half of that. So if we don't increase electric at all and we increase water and sewer 10%, a typical customer's utility monthly bill is probably gonna be about 5% higher. And if you're an electric heat person, won't be 5% higher.
Yeah, you can't really compare that because, I mean, I understand what you're doing, but not everybody heats with electricity. A lot of
Yeah.
people heat with propane, so, a big rate increase in electricity affects those people, may not affect those people.
Yeah,
Whereas sewer water is affecting,
Yeah.
everybody. Your usage is your usage.
yep.
Okay, so a question I have on utility bills. So when you have utility bill revenue,
Yep,
that's usage plus fixed rates.
that's all of, everything that's on the monthly bill we send to somebody.
Okay, and same for sewer.
Yep.
Now, on the sewer revenue side of it, where do you break out the commercial user that's dumping into our system? Where is the revenue from that?
If they have a water meter and they're just connected to our sanitary system, it's in utility bills.
Okay, so the sewer utility bill includes G&G septic?
No, they don't have, they don't have a water meter up there that.
No,
is-
but I'm talking about sewer.
Yeah, that's the third line item is G&G septic dumping. That's the only, they haul everything is not a utility bill into the system. So that's revenue that they pay us,
The 135
yeah.
for 2025.
Well, that's the budget, I think we'll beat that, but, which is why we bumped it up.
Okay. So my question then, if we're spending, how do you arrive at a fee for them? If we're spending 177,000 or whatever we're spending to, haul
Yes,
sludge or to remove product from that facility that we have to remove, what percentage of that is actually produced by the city of Grand Marais? What percentage is produced by what he dumps into the system over the course of a year? And are we recouping, are we charging what we need to charge
Yeah.
for that usage versus what other people pay on a, I guess, a per gallon rate or whatever, however you calculate that?
well, I think the answer is, we believe so. We charge them quite a bit more per gallon than a typical customer in the city, because we understand what they're dumping is not the same thing as what a typical customer dumps.
Well, I'm thinking for the city, I'm thinking it's probably more of a product we have to manage than our stuff that comes from the city.
I'm not sure whether that's
Or-
true. I think that we have looked at that question, like, okay, what, can we calculate, how many of these solids that we end up dealing with would we have to deal with if we didn't do this side of things? And are we collecting enough money? I understand the question you're trying to ask.
Yeah.
And I also understand the way you approached it, because I kind of thought about it the same way for many years. It's nice to see a balanced revenue source that goes with the hauling, but they're actually two different things. And the hauling, we have always had to do before they were here.
Yeah.
And
about
so it's not like half of it is their responsibility. Well, maybe it is, frankly, half of it is their responsibility. It's hard to say. But what we know is it's built into our rates for all of our customers, including them. And they pay a higher rate per gallon than the folks that are in town, because they're bringing something that's stronger. So that's not to say we shouldn't always ask ourselves that question, which is, are our rates that we're charging them the appropriate, are they the right ones? So for this instance, if we're gonna increase our rates 10%, we're gonna increase their rates too.
So I have just a process question. Are you needing from us today approval or not approval of these rate increases?
Well, I'm asking for it. If you don't do it, we won't change the rates until you do it.
I'm just kind of
Yeah.
scheduling things. Is that supposed to be happening at this meeting today, or is there a
It
subsequent
is,
meeting?
we don't have anything scheduled to do it at a later date. So if for any reason you decide you need some more time with this, we'll have to pick it up let's talk about that and pick a date and come back and do it.
We'd have to have another date
Yeah.
before the first of the year.
Well, it doesn't have to be,
Okay.
right? Because we don't have to change rates annually. We
Okay.
can change them whenever we want.
All right, right,
It's just
right,
good
right,
practice
right,
to do it
right,
that way.
Right.
And, we're gonna send out a utility bill for December usage in early January. So even if we waited and came back and did these rates in early January, it's only December usage that would be affected by that.
Right.
But it's January revenue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm asking partly because I have another obligation I need to get out to.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
it seems like there may be further discussion warranted here.
well, one option for you, because I also have another, is we could continue this meeting to a different time when it's convenient for you to in December. still.
Anytime's fine with me. I'll work around whatever I gotta work around.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could be back also.
What do you think about coming back on Friday?
That there's potentially a conflict for me on Friday afternoon,
Okay,
but in the morning it's better. Or
Be fine with me too in the morning, I guess.
how about 9 o'clock?
That's good.
Okay,
could do that.
and then what I would ask of you is digest and then email me things that, if there's other materials you want to see for that meeting. If you could send me a request tomorrow, then we'll put some stuff together.
Okay.
And if you don't need anything, that's fine.
I need maybe one thing, but
Yeah.
it's not a big thing. Okay,
Well, then I guess we're continued until 9 o'clock on
that's fine
Friday.
with me. We can, continue the meeting Friday at 9 a.m. What is that, 9th? 12th?
Yeah, 12.
Friday the 12th at 9 a.m., continue the meeting. I guess that's all I have. If you motion to adjourn,
Well, we'll just recess until
or we're
9.
just okay. Yeah. Well, we'll end this meeting, continue it Friday at 9 a.m., where we left off. If you got any other questions, I should give you, I don't know if you have my phone number or not. You can call me if you got any questions. Okay.
I know I have an email for you.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks.